Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Psycho 2 by Robert Bloch. And this particular copy is from Warner Horror. It's hard to tell. Spine's a little beat up, but with a book like this, you get what you get. Warner Books. There we go. I'm just going to read the back cover copy because Norman Bates will never die. You remember Norman, the shy motel manager with the fatal mother fixation. Now, years after his bout of butchery that horrified the world, Norman Bates is at large again, breaking free from the psycho ward, cutting a shocking swath of blood all the way to Hollywood, where, so it happens, they're making a movie about Norman's life and crimes. A movie that suddenly and terrifyingly becomes a lot like real life. Psycho 2, The Nightmare Continues. It's kind of difficult to read that because you can see that's not coloring in the. I don't believe that's color. Maybe it is. I don't know. That made it hard to read. I thought that was wear and tear on the black. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's marbling in the cover, the coloring. But anyway, so there's your back cover copy. For the too long didn't watch crowd, I gave this book 3 out of 5. I liked it, but that's as far as I can go. Now, just in case you haven't watched my review for the original Psycho, I gave that 5 out of 5. An absolute classic. I have some issues with this book. And I'm very interested to hear what other people think. If any of you have read this, I want to know what you think about it, what your rating would be, because when I posted on Facebook that this is what I was currently reading, had a few people comment on it. One person said they loved it even more than the original. And I may have to ask them why. But this is going to be difficult because so many things that could be spoiled. First of all, it's fantastic writing. Robert Bloch was a masterful storyteller, so the writing is great. I will say, when I originally read the back cover copy, the first thing that popped to mind was the Kevin Smith movie Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, in which, for anyone who doesn't know, the characters Jay and Silent Bob find out that there is a movie being made based on the comic book characters that are based on Jay and Silent Bob. And so they're going to travel across the country to Hollywood to stop them from making this movie. So that's the first thing that popped into my head when I read the back cover copy. But that's obviously a crazy comedy. I love it. It's hilarious. This is a horror novel, and it has all the hallmarks of Robert Bloch's writing of ish Psycho. We're introduced to. We start in the mental hospital where Norman is, and we're introduced to his doctor, the head of the his doctor and the head of the mental hospital. They're not the same person. As well as a couple of nuns show up. There's the inside that die cut cover. And as it says, Norman makes his escape, takes off. And for a majority of the book, we are following Norman's doctor, who believes that Norman is going to Hollywood to try to put a stop to this movie. And so we're following him, and he is dealing with the people in Hollywood and trying to shut down this movie, trying to warn everybody Norman's coming. He's going to kill you. He's a crazy person. Blah, blah, blah. Which all works. Fine. It works well enough. I felt, I could be completely off base, and I meant to look and see if I could find anything that said something about this. It felt as if Robert Bloch had something to say about Hollywood and about violence in movies, because there are a number of characters that expound on these things. I was going to say they get a little preachy. That may be up to your opinion, whether it's they're being preachy or not. But what we've got with the Hollywood people is we've got the producer, we've got the director, we have the screenwriter, we have the main actress, and we have the main actor. And everybody seems to have an opinion on how violence should be portrayed in the media, in movies, whether or not it should be portrayed in movies. The doctor, who initially, he goes there to try and stop this, but ends up becoming sort of a consultant, since it's a movie based on Norman Bates. He was Norman Bates' doctor. So he becomes a consultant. He's going to read the script, give them notes, that sort of thing. And this leads to him talking about violence and the screenwriter talking about violence. A lot of talk about the movies and the Hollywood system. And it just felt to me like Robert Bloch might be trying to say something. Again, I don't know if that's the case. That's simply how I felt. The reason this is only a 3, and I could probably be persuaded to go 3.5, but I'm not bumping it up to 4, and I'm not rounding it up to 4 if I were to make it a 3.5. The main thing is there are, again, in my opinion, far too many coincidences that happen in the book. And I'm going to keep saying in my opinion. Although, I mean, every review I do is simply my opinion. But the coincidences did not feel natural to me. In the F. Paul Wilson Repairman Jack series, there are some incredibly crazy coincidences, but F. Paul Wilson essentially covers his back by saying, at one point, having a character tell Jack, there are no coincidences. Even things that seem completely out of the blue, a crazy coincidence, is actually something, a situation, whatever, that has been manipulated by the powers that are at war. And so F. Paul Wilson covered himself. As you're reading, something happens and you're like, that's just insane. The chances of that actually happening, 1 in a trillion. Oh, but it happened because these forces beyond our knowledge have caused it to happen. Well, you don't have that in this. There are no greater forces, good and evil, human concepts, good and evil, fighting it out. It's just a straightforward story that has some really big coincidences. And I think the ending might drive a wedge in the fandom. I thought it was fine. I can't really talk about it at all because it would be a huge spoiler. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I absolutely didn't love it. It was okay, and I can't talk about the potential problems that I have with it because, again, it would give it away, and I'm trying to avoid that, obviously. I do think it's a book worth reading, especially if you're a Psycho fan. It's a well-written Robert Bloch novel that continues the story from Psycho, but I do have issues with it, and I liked it, but that's as far as I can go. And just so you know, it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie Psycho 2, which I watched a number of times. Probably it was on HBO, which is what we had way back in the day, so I would rewatch stuff whenever it would pop up. I enjoyed that movie, at least my recollection. Well, I know I enjoyed it back then. I was going to say my recollection is that I enjoyed it. I know for a fact I enjoyed it back then. There are still a couple of things that we either talk about or quote from that movie. I'd like to see it again. I'd like to get a nice box set of all the Psycho movies. But this absolutely nothing to do with that movie. No connection in any way, shape, or form, except that they're called Psycho 2 and Norman Bates. So I think I think I've covered everything. It's well written. It has interesting characters, but I have some problems. I have problems with the coincidences, and I think the ending is just okay, but I can't talk about any details at all without giving things away. A lot of red herrings, which some work, in my opinion, some don't. Some are way too contrived, I think might be the word to use. But again, it was not a waste of time at all. I'm glad I read it. Psycho 2 by Robert Bloch. Excuse me. So, there you have that. Question for the video. Are you a fan of the Psycho franchise? I am, generally speaking. Of course, the first movie's a classic. The original book, which I just read for the first time last year, absolutely classic. I gave it, as I said earlier, I gave it 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed the movie Psycho 2. I don't remember if I've ever seen Psycho 3. I feel like I must have. And if I have, doesn't seem to be very memorable. But I think that's all I've seen. I haven't seen anything past that. And I did not watch the Bates Motel TV show. And I've never seen the Gus Van Sant Psycho remake. I hear it's terrible. But I love the first book. Love the original movie. Really, really like the second movie. And enjoyed this. I liked Psycho 2. I have the third book, which I believe is called Psycho House. So I'll probably read that sometime this year. Been building a nice Robert Bloch collection. I never watched, or I already said I didn't watch Bates Motel, but I hear for the most part it's pretty good, although it reimagines a lot of stuff. Didn't just, show the early life of Norman Bates, but changed some elements of established lore. That's how I understand it anyway. But still that it was a good show. What about you? How many of the movies have you seen? How many of the books have you read? Did you watch Bates Motel? What are your thoughts? Let's talk Psycho. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, excuse me, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. I'm thinking of something else and not paying attention to what I'm saying, so I apologize. But that's it. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.